The sun had not yet risen, but the arena was alive with noise. Torches flickered against the tall stone walls, casting long, dancing shadows over the dirt floor below. The crowd, a mix of humans and strange creatures, shouted, jeered, and threw coins at the fighters who dared step into the ring. It was a place where only the strongest survived, and only the ruthless were remembered. Lyra stood at the edge of the arena, her hands bound in thick ropes, her heart pounding like a war drum. She had been dragged here against her will, accused of crimes she did not commit, and thrown into this pit of shadows as punishment. Around her, other fighters waited, some already wounded, some silent, and some screaming in terror. None of them looked at her. They had learned long ago that showing fear gave your enemies an advantage. Her mind raced. She had always known her powers were dangerous. Her ability to shift, to transform into a creature with strength and speed beyond human limits, had been her secret for years. She had learned to hide it, to blend in, to survive in a world that would kill her if it discovered the truth. But now, with the crowd watching, her secret was a lifeline. If she could control it, she might survive. If she could not, she would die. The gates of the arena creaked and slammed open. A hulking figure stepped inside, moving with the silent authority of someone who ruled everything he looked at. The crowd fell silent for a heartbeat, then erupted into whispers and gasps. This was the Alpha King, Kale, a man who had ruled the kingdom with both strength and fear. No one dared defy him, and even fewer had ever met his gaze and lived to tell the story. Kale's eyes, dark and unreadable, swept over the fighters in the arena. When they landed on Lyra, a flicker of something crossed his face: interest, curiosity, perhaps even recognition. It was dangerous to catch the Alpha King's attention. Yet somehow, Lyra did not flinch. She could feel his presence like a shadow pressing against her. And she squared her shoulders. If she was going to die today, it would not be from fear. A horn sounded, deep and resonant, and the gates separating the fighters slammed shut. Lyra's first opponent lunged at her. A man twice her size, muscles bulging under scars and tattoos. The crowd roared as he raised his sword, aiming for her head. Lyra's instincts kicked in. In a blur, she shifted, her form elongating, muscles coiling and stretching. She moved faster than the eye could follow, dodging the strike and knocking the man off balance. The crowd gasped. Murmurs spread like wildfire. She is not like the others. Lyra did not have time to think. Another fighter charged, then another, each more brutal than the last. She shifted again, her body becoming more animalistic, her senses sharpening. She could smell the fear, hear the heartbeat of every opponent, even see the smallest movement before it happened. She struck, dodged, twisted, and leaped. The dirt beneath her feet flew, and the arena echoed with the sounds of combat. The clash of weapons, the roar of the crowd, the grunts of effort. Through it all, Kale watched, his expression calm, almost bored, yet his eyes never left her. He saw everything: her struggle, her skill, her fear, and the courage that lingered beneath it. Most fighters would have broken by now, but she had a fire inside her, one that refused to be tamed. The larger men attacked together, forming a circle around her. Lyra's heart raced. Every nerve in her body screamed for her to run, to escape. But there was no escape here. The crowd wanted a show, and she had to survive long enough to give it to them. She shifted again, her form growing darker, stronger, sharper. Her eyes glowed faintly in the torchlight, and her claws tore through the air with deadly precision. One by one, her attackers fell back, some wounded, some terrified, some gasping for breath. Lyra's chest heaved, her pulse hammering in her ears. She did not allow herself to celebrate. She could feel something dangerous in the arena tonight, a presence she had never sensed before. And when she looked up, she understood why. Kale had descended from his throne, his steps silent against the stone. The crowd parted instinctively as he approached, and even the fighters dared not move. He stopped a few paces from Lyra, his gaze locking with hers. She could feel the power radiating from him, a force that made the air thick and heavy. She had fought many enemies, faced death countless times. But this was something different. "You have power," Kale said, his voice low, smooth, and dangerous. "But you fight like a cornered animal. Tell me, can you survive what comes next?" Lyra met his gaze without fear. She did not answer with words, but with her stance, her readiness, her unyielding spirit. Kale studied her for a long moment, then nodded once, almost imperceptibly. Suddenly, the arena gates opened again, and new opponents were sent in. Bigger, faster, stronger. The crowd cheered wildly, hungry for blood and spectacle. Lyra's stomach twisted, but she clenched her fists. She would not give them the satisfaction of fear. She would not die without making them see her strength. As the first of the new opponents lunged, Lyra shifted fully, her transformation now complete. She had always feared this form, feared losing herself to the animal within. But there was no time to hesitate. Her body moved like liquid, every strike precise, every dodge perfect. The arena seemed to slow around her. Each opponent fell back, stunned by her speed and power. The crowd went silent, then erupted into awe and fear. Whispers filled the air. The prophecy. Could it be true? Kale stepped closer, closer than anyone had dared, and his gaze burned into hers. "Enough," he commanded. The crowd froze at his word. He turned to her, his voice quieter now, meant only for her. "She is mine." The words struck her like a thunderclap. She had survived every attack, every blow, every moment of terror, but this was new. She had never been claimed before, never been told she belonged to anyone. The feeling was strange, frightening, and magnetic. Lyra did not move, did not speak. She only stared at him, heart hammering in her chest. The ropes binding her fell away without a touch, as if the king's will alone had undone them. Kale's presence was overwhelming, yet there was something in his eyes that made her pulse race in a way that had nothing to do with fear. The crowd was silent now, all eyes on the two of them. No one dared speak, no one dared move. Lyra felt a shift inside her, a mix of anticipation, confusion, and the lingering adrenaline of battle. She had survived the arena, yes, but she was not free. She was only beginning to understand the force that had chosen her, and the man who now claimed her. Kale extended his hand toward her, not as a gesture of command, but as a test, a challenge. "Come with me," he said, his voice both promise and warning. "The night is far from over." Lyra hesitated for the briefest moment, weighing the danger, the uncertainty, and the strange pull she felt toward him. Then, with the courage that had carried her this far, she took a step forward. Her claws retracted, her form softened, but her eyes never left his. As she left the arena behind, the crowd erupted into noise again, but Lyra barely noticed. Her world had changed in the blink of an eye. She had survived the fighting ring, yes, but she had also stepped into something far more dangerous. The attention of the Alpha King, and for the first time in her life, she wondered whether survival was enough, or if she was about to discover what it truly meant to be alive. The gates slammed shut behind them, and the torches flickered in the darkness. Lyra's heart still raced, but she knew one thing. This was only the beginning, and somewhere deep in the shadows of the fortress, Kale watched her carefully, already plotting, already intrigued, already certain that her life and his would never be the same again. The fortress loomed above the cliffs, jagged and black against the rising sun. Its towers pierced the sky like dark spears, and its walls were lined with guards who never blinked, never wavered. Lyra followed silently behind Kale, her eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. Her body ached from the arena, but her mind was sharp, alert. She had survived the fighting ring, but now she faced something far more dangerous, the Alpha King himself. Kale led her through corridors of cold stone, the air heavy with the scent of incense, blood, and old magic. Servants hurried past them, bowing, whispering, and stepping aside. Lyra felt their eyes on her, curious, fearful, and admiring all at once. She did not know whether to feel pride or dread. Here, in Kale's fortress, power was absolute, and her own abilities, though extraordinary, made her an object of interest and suspicion. "You move carefully," Kale said, his voice echoing slightly in the hall. He walked beside her, taller than anyone she had ever seen, his presence both commanding and calm. "But caution will not save you forever. You must learn to trust more than instincts." Lyra kept her gaze forward, biting back her words. Trust was not a gift she gave lightly. Every person she had ever trusted had betrayed her. Yet, there was something about Kale that felt different. Something that both unsettled her and drew her closer. They entered a vast hall, lit by torches and chandeliers that hung like stalactites from the ceiling. Shadows danced across tapestries depicting battles, victories, and the Alpha King's ancestors, each more intimidating than the last. Lyra's eyes lingered on a carved statue of a woman, her hands reaching toward the sky. Her face, fierce yet sorrowful. She felt a strange connection to the figure, as if it mirrored the fire burning inside her. Kale stopped at the center of the hall, turning to face her. "Here, you are not just a fighter," he said. "Here, you will learn, and perhaps in time, you will understand the meaning of power." Lyra's heart pounded. The words were not a threat, but they carried the weight of command, of destiny. She had never been spoken to this way, never challenged like this, and it left her both anxious and intrigued. Over the next days, Kale put her through trials unlike any she had faced in the arena. Physical challenges tested her strength, agility, and endurance. She was forced to navigate labyrinths filled with traps, confront illusions that preyed on her fears, and spar with guards who moved like shadows themselves. With every challenge, her abilities grew sharper, her transformations quicker, and her control stronger. Yet the trials were not only physical. Kale pushed her to confront emotions she had long buried: fear, anger, doubt, and loneliness. One evening, he cornered her in the courtyard, the moonlight casting a silver glow on the stones. "Why do you hide?" he asked quietly. His eyes were dark, searching, almost gentle. "Your power is not a curse. It is a gift. But you treat it like a burden." "Why?" Lyra's hands trembled, though she clenched them at her sides. She had no answer that could satisfy him or herself. She had been taught to survive, to hide, to fear her own strength. Now, Kale demanded something different: honesty, trust, and courage beyond combat. She began, then stopped. Her voice failed her. He tilted his head, patient yet insistent. She had never felt such a gaze before, one that seemed to pierce through every mask, every lie. Finally, she whispered, "I am afraid. Afraid that if I am not careful, I will lose myself." Kale's expression softened slightly. He reached a hand toward her, but did not touch. "Then you will not be alone," he said. "You will learn to control it. I will help you. If you allow me." The words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Lyra felt a pull she could not resist. Yet a part of her recoiled. She had never been anyone's responsibility, never been allowed the comfort of trust. Yet, in Kale's presence, the idea did not feel threatening, it felt like a promise. Over the next week, Lyra trained relentlessly. Kale's methods were harsh but fair, pushing her to limits she had never imagined. She grew stronger, faster, more precise. Her shifts became smoother, her instincts sharper. And yet, with every passing day, she noticed something changing in Kale too. He watched her, not only as a king commanding a subject, but with interest, curiosity, and something that resembled admiration. One evening, a banquet was held in the fortress. Nobles, warriors, and strange creatures gathered to witness the Alpha King's claim. Lyra was introduced as his challenger of the arena, a title that drew both envy and respect. She moved through the hall quietly, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes on her, yet she did not falter. Kale seated himself beside her at the high table. His hand brushed hers accidentally, or perhaps intentionally, and a spark of warmth traveled through her. She tried to focus on the crowd, the food, the music, anything to distract herself from the strange pull she felt. "You have survived what none could," Kale said quietly, leaning close so that only she could hear. "But the arena is only the beginning. True strength comes from understanding yourself and those you trust." "All?" Lyra's heart raced. His words were not commands, not threats, they were a challenge, a test, and something deeper she could not name. She looked into his eyes, searching, and saw a flicker of vulnerability, of loneliness, hidden beneath his mask of power. For the first time, she wondered what it would be like to reach him, to break through the walls he had built around himself. But the evening's calm shattered when a servant rushed into the hall, bowing low. "My king!" "A plot has been uncovered." Assassins approached the fortress. Chaos erupted. Nobles whispered frantically. Guards drew weapons. Lyra's body tensed, instincts screaming. She shifted quickly, her form growing stronger, her senses alert. Kale stood, towering over everyone, his eyes like storm clouds. "They are coming for me," he said, almost to himself. Then, louder. "Protect the gates. Do not let them inside." Lyra's heart hammered. She had faced death in the arena. Yes. But this was different. These were trained killers, moving with precision and cunning. And Kale, he was not invincible, no matter how powerful he seemed. The first wave of attackers broke through the outer gates, and the fortress walls shook with the clash of steel. Lyra did not hesitate. She leaped into the fray, her form shifting seamlessly, her strikes precise, her speed unmatched. She protected the courtyards, the gates, and most importantly, KL. Each movement was a dance of survival and strategy, her mind and body working in perfect harmony. Kale fought beside her, a storm of strength and authority. Together, they moved as one, anticipating each other's actions, saving one another from deadly blows. Lyra realized then that this partnership, this connection, was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was thrilling, terrifying, and exhilarating all at once. When the last of the assassins fell, silence settled over the fortress. The nobles stared, the guards bowed, and the survivors breathed heavily. Lyra shifted back to her human form, exhausted, but alive. Kael approached, his expression unreadable. Yet his eyes held something intense, something unspoken. "You are stronger than I imagined," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "And braver than you know. You have earned a place beside me, if you choose it." Lyra felt a mix of fear and longing. The arena had been survival. The fortress had been training. But this, the Alpha King's attention, his challenge, his claim was something else entirely. She did not answer immediately. She only met his gaze, feeling the weight of his words and the pull of destiny that now tied them together. That night, Lyra lay in the small chamber provided for her, staring at the shadows on the stone walls. She thought of the arena, the blood, the cheers, and the fear. She thought of Kael, of his eyes, and the strange warmth that lingered long after he had left. She was tired. She was wary. But she was not afraid. Not entirely. Because she knew one truth. Survival was no longer enough. She had stepped into a world of power, loyalty, and danger, and she had no choice but to face it head-on. Outside her window, the moon rose high over the fortress, casting silver light on the cliffs and the waves below. Somewhere in the darkness, Kael stood on the battlements, looking out, thinking, waiting, and Lyra, her body and mind still tense from the day's battles, realized with a start that the game had only just begun and that she was no longer alone. The Alpha King had claimed her, and in his shadow, her life and heart would never be the same. The night air was heavy with tension as Lyra stood on the fortress balcony. The cliffs below were swallowed in darkness, the waves crashing against jagged rocks far below. Above, the blood moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie red glow over the kingdom. It was said that when the moon turned red, curses grew stronger. Powers became uncontrollable, and destiny revealed itself in ways both frightening and unavoidable. Lyra felt the pull of the blood moon in her veins. Her heart raced as a strange energy coursed through her body. It was stronger than anything she had ever felt in the arena or during her training. She could feel her shifting power straining against her control, her body craving freedom, craving transformation. She clenched her fists, willing herself to remain human. But a whisper in her mind urged her to let go. Kale approached silently from behind. His shadow stretched across the stone floor, dark and commanding. He did not speak at first, only observed her with those deep, unreadable eyes. Then, softly, he said, "The blood moon does not grant power without cost. Tonight, you will face yourself and me." Lyra swallowed hard. She had trained for this, fought for this, yet fear gnawed at the edges of her courage. "I don't know if I can control it," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I hurt you? Or someone else?" Kale's expression softened. And for a moment, the fierce, untouchable Alpha King seemed almost human. "Then you will not be alone," he said, placing a hand briefly on her shoulder. "Trust me. Trust yourself." The wind howled as the red light of the moon deepened. Lyra closed her eyes, feeling the energy swirl around her, around the fortress, around Kale. The blood moon had always been a symbol of danger and destiny, and now she realized why. Her powers were not just a gift, they were a responsibility. And tonight, she would be tested beyond anything she had ever faced. The first sign came with a tremor in the stone beneath her feet. The castle shook as if awakening from a long slumber. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, moving as if alive. Lyra's senses sharpened, and instinctively, she shifted, her form growing larger, faster, more precise. Her eyes glowed faintly red, reflecting the moonlight, and her muscles coiled with energy. Kyle watched her closely, his own power radiating outward in subtle waves. The air between them seemed charged with electricity, tension, and something deeper, something neither of them fully understood. He had faced many battles, many enemies, yet Lyra's energy fascinated him. It was wild, untamed, dangerous, and beautiful. Suddenly, a shadow moved across the courtyard below. Lyra's ears twitched, senses alert. From the darkness, creatures emerged, twisted. Nightmarish beings born of the blood moon's curse. They were faster than humans, stronger than any guard, and their eyes burned with a predatory hunger. Kale drew his sword, its blade shimmering faintly in the moonlight. "Do not hold back," he commanded. "Show me what you are." Lyra nodded, her heart racing. She had never fought like this outside the arena, never with the stakes so high, never with the power so fully alive in her veins. She leaped from the balcony, shifting in midair. Her body elongated, claws extended, senses heightened. She landed silently, her movements fluid, precise, and deadly. The creatures attacked in waves, their growls echoing through the fortress. Lyra struck, dodged, and moved with a grace that seemed almost supernatural. Each motion was a blend of human intellect and animal instinct. She could feel the blood moon amplifying her powers, pushing her beyond the limits she had known. Kale fought beside her, a force of strategy and strength. Together, they moved in perfect rhythm, covering each other's weaknesses, anticipating each attack. Lyra realized then that their bond was deeper than survival. It was trust, instinct, and understanding forged in the heat of battle. But as the night progressed, Lyra felt her control slipping. Her shifts became wilder, less predictable. She could hear whispers in her mind, shadows urging her to give in, to let the power take over completely. Panic threatened to overwhelm her. "No," she gasped, shaking her head, trying to hold herself together. "I can't. I won't." Kale stepped close, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Focus on me," he said firmly. "Not the power, not the fear. Me. Control it, or it will control you." Lyra's eyes met his, and for the first time, she felt a calm anchor in the storm. His presence grounded her, reminding her that she was not alone. She took a deep breath, centering herself, and slowly regained her form. The creatures fell back, stunned by her sudden control, and she felt the surge of energy settle into her muscles instead of her mind. But victory was only temporary. From the shadows of the highest tower, a figure emerged, another shapeshifter. Dark and formidable, exuding power and malice. It was clear this was no ordinary enemy. This one had come for her specifically, drawn by the blood moon and her rising strength. Kale's eyes narrowed. "Stay behind me," he warned. "This one is different." Lyra hesitated, torn between instinct and fear. But Kale did not wait for her to comply. He stepped forward, meeting the shapeshifter with a confidence born of experience, skill, and authority. Lyra watched, her heart racing, her body trembling with the urge to shift, to help, to fight. She realized then that she could not remain passive. She had to act not just to survive, but to protect Kael, the man who had claimed her and trusted her. With a roar, she shifted again, her form larger and more fearsome than ever. The ground shook as she moved, claws cutting through the air. She joined Kael in the battle, striking with precision and instinct. Together, they were unstoppable. The two of them moved as one, weaving through danger, countering attacks, and forcing the enemy to retreat. Finally, the shapeshifter faltered, wounded, and retreating into the darkness. Lyra shifted back to her human form, breathing heavily, her muscles trembling with exhaustion. Kael approached her, eyes searching, face unreadable. "You did well," he said, his voice low and steady. "Better than I expected. You are stronger than you know." Lyra shook her head, still trying to catch her breath. I almost lost control," she admitted. "The blood moon. It makes me stronger, but dangerous." Kael studied her, his expression thoughtful. "Power is always dangerous. Strength without control destroys everything. But you have learned to balance it. Tonight, you faced not just your enemies, but yourself." Lyra's heart beat rapidly, not from exertion, but from the intensity of the moment. Kael's praise was different from anything she had ever known. It carried respect, recognition, and something she could not name. She had survived the arena, she had survived the fortress, and now she had survived the blood moon's test. But she realized that survival was no longer enough. She wanted more. The moon hung low, casting red light over the fortress. Kael reached out, not touching, but close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "This night is not over," he said quietly. "The blood moon has shown us much, but it has also revealed what is coming. You are not alone in this. You never will be." Lyra met his gaze, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear, awe, and something deeper she did not yet understand. I don't know what is happening to me," she admitted. Kael's voice softened, almost a whisper. "You are becoming who you were meant to be. And I will be here to guide you. If you let me." Lyra's heart fluttered. She had faced death, danger, and darkness before, but never had she felt such a connection, such trust, such longing. The bond between them was more than survival, more than strategy. It was something fierce, fragile, and unbreakable all at once. As the night deepened, Lyra stood beside Kael on the balcony, watching the blood moon rise higher. The The kingdom below was quiet, but she could sense the dangers yet to come, the challenges yet to face, and the truths yet to uncover. She realized then that she was not just a fighter, a shapeshifter, or a survivor. She was a force, a being of power, courage, and will. And beside her, the Alpha King waited not just as her commander, not just as a protector, but as someone who understood her in ways no one else could. The blood moon cast its crimson light over them, sealing their bond, marking their destinies, and warning that the trials were far from over. Lyra's heart beat with anticipation and fear, knowing that the coming days would test her more than any battle had before. And as Kale looked at her, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips, Lyra understood one thing with certainty. Their lives were now entwined. In power, in struggle, and in something far more dangerous than any enemy. The night had tested them, and both had survived. But the true test, the one of trust, control, and heart, was only just beginning. The fortress was quiet now, the blood moon sinking behind jagged cliffs. As dawn crept across the horizon, shadows lingered in the corners, remnants of the chaos from the night before. Lyra stood on the balcony, her body tired but her mind alert. The events of the blood moon had changed her. Her powers had grown stronger, sharper, and more precise. But more than that, her connection to Kale, the Alpha King, had deepened in ways she did not yet fully understand. Kale appeared beside her, silent as the wind. His presence was steady, commanding, yet softened by the events of the previous night. He had been wounded during the battle with the cursed shapeshifter, but his strength and resilience remained undeniable. Lyra looked at him, noticing the small details she had never seen before. The curve of his jaw, the intensity in his eyes, the way he moved with quiet authority. "You've changed," Kale said quietly, his voice carrying over the balcony. "Not just in power, in confidence, in control." Lyra's chest tightened. She had trained, fought, and survived every challenge thrown at her. But hearing this from him made the trials feel real in a new way. "I had to," she said simply. "I can't survive by hiding anymore." Kale's gaze softened. "And you won't have to. Not as long as I am here." The fortress doors opened suddenly, and a group of messengers hurried in, bowing low. "My king," one said urgently, "the rival factions are gathering. They will not accept the outcome of last night. The kingdom is at risk." Kale's eyes narrowed. "Then we act," he said, his voice cold and decisive. "You, Lyra, will stand with me. Together, we end this threat permanently." Lyra's heart raced. This was more than the arena, more than the blood moon. This was war, strategy, and the fate of the kingdom resting on their shoulders. And yet, she felt no fear. Not like before. Beside Kale, she felt strength, purpose, and an unspoken trust that made her ready to face whatever came next. They rode through the fortress gates on horseback, the early morning mist curling around them like ghosts. The kingdom lay below, a patchwork of fields, villages, and dark forests. Kale's army awaited, disciplined and silent, ready for battle. Lyra felt the weight of expectation on her, but also the thrill of purpose. As they approached the enemy's stronghold, Lyra shifted mid-ride, testing her abilities, feeling the rush of power flow through her. Her body was faster, stronger, more attuned than ever. She could sense the soldiers ahead, their movements, their fears, and their plans. Kale rode beside her, his presence grounding her even as her powers surged. The enemy emerged from the forest, a sea of warriors, shapeshifters, and creatures twisted by greed and malice. Lyra felt a surge of adrenaline. The battle would be fierce, but this time, she was not just fighting for survival. She was fighting for the kingdom, for Kale, and for the bond that had formed between them. The clash began with a roar. Steel met steel, claws met armor, and the air was filled with the sounds of battle. Lyra moved like a storm, striking with precision, dodging with agility, and shifting seamlessly between human and creature form. Kale was a force beside her, his sword a blur, his strategy flawless. Together, they were unstoppable. Lyra noticed the enemy's leader, a massive shapeshifter with red eyes and twisted horns. It moved with confidence, a predator used to control and power. Lyra felt a flicker of fear, but Kale's hand brushed hers. A silent reminder that they were together. She drew strength from him, and in that moment, she understood the true meaning of trust. The two of them confronted the leader, moving as one. Kale's sword clashed against the enemy's weapon, sparks flying, while Lyra struck from the side. Her claws precise and lethal. The battle was intense, but with their combined strength and strategy, they began to overpower the enemy. Finally, Lyra seized an opening. She shifted fully into her most powerful form, her energy coiling around her like a storm. With a roar, she struck the enemy leader, sending him sprawling to the ground. Kale moved in, his sword at the ready, but the leader was finished. The remaining forces faltered, their morale broken by the defeat of their leader. The battlefield grew silent as the enemy retreated into the forest. Lyra shifted back to human form, breathing heavily, her body trembling with exhaustion and triumph. Kale approached, his eyes scanning her face, studying her every movement. "You have done more than survive," he said, his voice low and steady. "You have saved the kingdom, and in doing so, you have earned my respect and my claim." Lyra's heart skipped. She had expected praise, strategy, perhaps acknowledgement of her strength, but Kale's words carried something deeper, something that resonated in her very soul. She had survived the arena, the fortress, the blood moon, but now she realized that her life had changed forever. Kale extended his hand, and for the first time, Lyra took it willingly. The touch was light, yet it carried the weight of promise, protection, and something unspoken between them. She felt her pulse quicken, not from battle, but from the connection that had formed in the fire of struggle. "You are mine," Kale said softly, not as a command, but as a statement of truth. Not as a prisoner, not as a subject, but as my equal. Together, we will face whatever comes next. Lyra looked into his eyes, seeing not just power and authority, but vulnerability, respect, and a bond forged in survival and trust. I will stand with you," she said, her voice firm, "not because I have to, but because I choose to." Kale's expression softened, a rare smile touching his lips. "Then we are no longer alone. The kingdom, the trials, the battles, they will not break us. Together, we are stronger than any enemy, any curse, any prophecy." The sun rose fully over the horizon, casting golden light across the battlefield and fortress. The shadows of the blood moon faded, but its lessons remained. Lyra felt her powers settle, no longer wild or uncontrollable, but balanced and precise. She had faced her fears, mastered her abilities, and found a connection that was stronger than fear, stronger than doubt, and stronger than any enemy. Kale stood beside her, his hand still in hers. The weight of the crown, the kingdom, and the battles ahead rested on both of them. But Lyra no longer felt alone. She had learned to trust, to fight, and to embrace the power within her, and she had discovered something far more valuable. A bond with the Alpha King that could not be broken by darkness, danger, or fate. The fortress gates opened, and the people of the kingdom emerged, bowing and cheering. Lyra and Kale rode through the streets together, side by side, a symbol of strength, trust, and unity. The citizens had witnessed their courage, their power, and their bond, and they knew that the kingdom was safe under their rule. As the day unfolded, Lyra walked through the fortress with Kale, exploring the halls, the training grounds, and the chambers that had once seemed so intimidating. She realized that this place, once a symbol of fear and power, had become a home, a place where she belonged, where she was valued, and where her abilities were recognized, not as a curse, but as a gift. Kale led her to the highest tower, where the sunrise painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. They stood together, looking out over the kingdom they had protected, the enemies they had defeated, and the bond they had forged. "You have changed the fate of this kingdom," Kale said quietly, "and you have changed mine. I did not expect to find someone like you, someone who could match me, challenge me, and still stand by my side." Lyra smiled faintly, a mixture of pride and warmth. "I never expected to find someone like you either," she said. "But here we are. And I choose to stand with you not just as your ally, but as someone who trusts you completely." Kale's hand tightened around hers. "Then let us face the future together," he said. "Whatever it brings, we face it as one. No prophecy, no curse, no enemy can break the bond we have forged." Lyra felt a calm settle over her, a peace she had never known in the chaos of the arena, the blood moon, and the battles that had defined her life. She had survived, yes, but more than that, she had found strength, purpose, and a connection that made her heart beat, not with fear, but with courage, trust, and hope. As the sun rose higher, casting its light across the fortress and kingdom, Lyra knew one thing with certainty. The Alpha King had claimed her, not as a prize, but as an equal, a partner, and a force to face the world together. And for the first time in her life, she felt truly alive, not just surviving, but thriving, in a world of shadows, power, and love. The kingdom was safe, the blood moon had passed, and Lyra and Kale stood together, ready to face whatever destiny had in store. And as they looked out over the lands they had fought to protect, they understood that the trials were not the end, but the beginning of a bond that would endure, unbroken, for all time.